Welcome to the REI Diamonds Show with Dan Breslin, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom.
Welcome to the REI Diamond Show with Nathan Krauthamer on scaling up the commercial deals. I'm Dan Breslin, host of the REI Diamond Show. Today's guest is a longtime friend of mine and business associate, Nathan Krauthamer. I met Nathan about 10 years ago when I was first getting started in real estate investing at my first ever ring meeting, the Real Estate Investor Networking Group, which I am now the organizer in several cities around the country. At that time, Nathan was concentrating on single-family rentals and the occasional fix and flip. Over time, Nathan has scaled up into a variety of larger projects, including apartment building renovation we're going to discuss, to lately office and commercial projects, to his largest project to date and current project that he's working on, the repurposing of an 85,000 square foot factory into office lofts in a hopefully gentrifying location where he and I are both buying properties. We are going to dive deep into that project and a few others on this episode, so sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome to the show, Mr. Nathan Krauthamer.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Appreciate it, man. How are things going today?
Going good. I'm excited to chat some real estate with you today.
It's been a long time. I think I mentioned this, trying to get you on the show several different times. We've known each other for a long, long time, and I really appreciate you taking the time out today to be with us here on the REI Diamond Show. I'm excited about this episode, so why don't we jump right in?
Sounds good, yeah.
I know all about, your history. We've known each other for like 10 plus years, I believe maybe 11 now. What did you do? How'd you get into real estate? What did it look like, your pathway to get to where you're at today? And what's a brief snapshot of your business as it stands today, Nathan?
Well, I guess I started off in real estate. I went to Widener University. I graduated high school in 1999, and I bought my first house in 2001 off campus. I bought a little 3-bedroom house with a finished basement and got 3 roommates. And I think my loan payment was around $300 a month, and I had 3 roommates paying me $400 each a month. So that was kind of how it started in 2001. After that, I was just steadily buying maybe 5 houses a year for 3 or 4 years. And then I scaled it up a little bit, and I started doing more like 10 to 20 deals a year. So currently right now, I've got about 120 rentals, and I have 90 units that are under construction now, or I need to sort out, that are hopefully going to be done in the next 5 months. I guess that's how my current business looks like right now.
Nice. Where did you originally get the money for the first house, Nathan? Did you just save the money up, from growing up, or how did that first deal?
So the first deal actually was kind of funny. My stepbrother, unfortunately, his father passed away. And he had like maybe $100,000 in a trust, and I had maybe $10,000 of my money. So I think I borrowed like $30,000 from his trust, and I used maybe $10,000 of my money. And it was a HUD house, and I had to live there for a year. So that was how I funded my first deal. And then after that, actually, I had my dad, I talked him into lending me about $50,000. So he funded my second deal, and then I refied it, paid him back, and then he funded the third one. So I kind of had like a $50,000 credit line going with him when I was, 21 to 23 years old. And then after I was 23, I didn't need him anymore because I was able to get bank money on my own.
Did you have a full-time job? Did you have any other sources of income during those early periods?
No, I didn't have any. I never had a full-time job. I started this when I was getting out of college. It definitely helped a lot with my dad helping me out. I probably could have borrowed, hard money or private money somewhere else. But it was just like I would buy a house for $20,000 or $30,000, put 20 into it. I would refi it, and he would co-sign on the loan, and then I would just do it again. It was definitely easier for me. That's why I was able to start when I was 21 or 22. I think I might have had to wait a couple more years to figure it out. But he didn't really believe in me completely. That's why he was pretty nervous with lending me the money. It took a lot of convincing.
That's funny. I had some help from my dad getting in too, so I had like no job, no money to speak of, and I didn't even have a car. We went to one of those, it wasn't Rich Dad, but the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or the Than Merrill type seminars that were around. It was Russ Whitney back in 2006. And I remember my dad did have, it was kind of the opposite of what you're saying. He had more faith in me than I had in myself at the time because I had no good track record to speak of, very limited knowledge of the business. I mean, I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad's book, but beyond that, there was no real estate knowledge whatsoever. My dad certainly saw the opportunity more than I could see at the time, put the credit cards on the line, seminars and, the first deal was Terrell Street in Chester, and I had to get a ride by my dad there, in Sun Village.
That's funny. I remember you running around Chester. I guess that was a long time ago. That was probably how we met, maybe 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, actually, I think you'd come out to the ring meeting with Russell Freimeyer, and I remember we all kind of sat there and had a little after dinner thing. Craig might have been there, I think. Maybe a couple other guys, I don't remember. But yeah, so that's cool. So did you have any kind of source of knowledge / mentor, or were you just hatching this real estate plan all on your own, just right out of thin air?
Well, I was actually living on campus, and it's a funny story. So I'll tell it really quick though. So I was living on campus, and some guy told me that he would drink more than me, and I was 19. I'm like, I could drink more than you. So we ended up drinking shots of Everclear.
Oh,
he
nice.
Passed out on the floor. He passed out on the floor in my room, and I took his shirt off, and I wrote, "I can't hang with Nate" on his back in permanent marker. And they tried to kick me off campus, so I decided to just move off campus. So I rented a house when I was 19. I was paying my landlord $1,100 a month. It was the nastiest house ever. It was worth nothing. So I started learning, the neighborhood around Widener and how it works and how. So I used to always stop this one guy, Tom Brawley. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a good buddy of mine. And whenever he was driving past, I would always stop him and try and ask him as many questions as I could. I didn't know that there was real estate meetings and there was your meeting and all these other meetings out there. I wish I went to these meetings when I was 20 years old or 19, but I didn't know about them. That was definitely one of the big mistakes that I made in the beginning. I didn't even realize that I could go out and network with other people that were making it happen. But I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, you did. It's funny because I've talked to you along the way, and I'm kind of oh, where'd you figure this out? Where'd you figure that out? And you're a little bit of an enigma, Nate. There's a lot of people in the business who you'll run into, and they're yeah, you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, you read Joe Nielsen's book on becoming a landlord, and they'll just point you right to this one source of place where they figured out a bunch of the business, and you never had a clear answer. So I thought to myself, either this guy's, trying to throw me off the path, or he just literally, like you said, kind of randomly asked questions and started to figure this shit out, for lack of a better description of sort of what he did.
No, you're right. Yeah, I didn't know. I had no idea. I just kind of winged it and talked to people and went with the flow. It was, the second house I bought, the landlord wanted to sell it because his tenant was a bad tenant, and she killed her husband and went to jail for 5 years, and she wasn't paying the rent. It was actually right next to Widener in Sun Hill on McAdam Street. But yeah, that was the second deal I did, and then I ended up renting to her, and I talked her into moving to the west end of Chester, and I put college kids into that house.
Nice.
So yeah, I guess just learning by my mistakes and other people's mistakes, and I definitely should have learned a different way in the beginning though. I wish I got out there and talked to more people and did more networking. But it was a slow start. I was doing one house, and then I was every 3 months, and the market was pretty hot at the time, so it was easy to find a good deal. A lot of houses went up in value, and people didn't even realize that their house was worth $30,000 more.
What was the progression for your career? I started off accidentally. I wanted to flip houses. That's all I wanted to do. We still flip houses today. But to feed the flip machine, we do a lot of wholesaling. And that first deal I said in Sun Village on Terrell Street that I mentioned, that was a wholesale deal, my first deal. And I kind of stumbled into wholesaling as a method for me to make income while the flips were going and while I start building the rental portfolio and things like that. It sounded like you started with the buy and hold, and I think even when we met, I remember you kind of being mostly a buy and hold guy. Did your method start to develop, and you start doing some assignments and some flips and things like that? How did you start to progress from college rentals to commercial deals that we're going to get to here in a few moments?
Yeah, so I was in the beginning, I was a strictly buy and hold guy for I'd say my first maybe 6 years in real estate. So from probably 2001 to 2007. All I did was, I didn't do any flips. I didn't do any wholesales. So I was just kind of building up my residual income. I remember a lot of years I was next year I want to buy 7 new houses, and I want to net, maybe like $400, conservatively a month a house. So, whatever that equals. I mean, like an extra couple grand in income a month I would have. So I felt like every year I'm like, wow, I'm getting a raise this year. I just did, 5 or 6 new rentals, and they're all cash flowing really strong. And then I started finding too many deals. So I figured I'd have to wholesale some stuff. I'd have to flip some stuff. Some deals were good deals, but they just weren't for me. So I might buy it and then relist it on the MLS. And I don't know how I really got into commercial. I think it was just, I had bought so many single family houses at the time. And then I just saw, the opportunity, and I felt like banks would lend me money on bigger projects because they were confident in that I knew what I was doing. So I was like, I think I could do this. And then I started scaling it up a little bit.
This is exactly what I love about you, Nathan, and why I had to have you on the show, because it's not like it was just deliberate, I'm going to just switch gears and I'm going to do commercial. And you hear a lot of people, obviously, in the networking events and things. And, like one of the best things I think that people say is, I'm not stopping until I build a skyscraper. I'm going to build a skyscraper. And you'll hear that a lot from guys when they first start coming around. And, it just seems like the pinnacle of the business, I guess, like going professional in the NFL or something like that. So let's frame this. You were doing single-family houses. Obviously, that became comfortable. And I think a lot of us and people listening to the show right now would probably relate to that. You do single families. Okay, I do a kitchen. I know how to pick cabinets. I know how to pick a countertop. I, know I'm roughly going to spend $45,000 into a 1,200 square foot house, or an 1,800 square foot house might cost me like $65,000. So you kind of get all the answers, and it's a bit of a cookie cutter. Then all of a sudden you got that comfort level. Do you remember the first deal where it sort of started to get scary, and it was like kind of stepped up to the next level? And maybe if you do remember that deal, you can kind of like go through maybe a little bit of a play-by-play on that deal.
Yeah, I think probably the first one I did where I was like, this is a little scary, I think was a 36-unit building that I bought in Chester. I bought one in like 2006, 2007 that I lived in, but it wasn't that scary. It was like a 12,000 square foot warehouse in Philly that I converted. But I'd say the scary one was this apartment building in Chester that I bought, Liberty Walk Apartments. I don't know if you remember it or not, but it was a 36-unit building. Everybody told me I was crazy at the time for buying it. I actually borrowed hard money to fund the deal, and the lender put, he put like I shouldn't have done it, but he put a second mortgage on like 30 other houses. So I was kind of scared because it was like, I put a lot on the line to make this deal happen.
So 36 units. I remember the deal, but for the listeners' sake, can you kind of describe what it was like when you bought the property? Was it occupied? Were there bad tenants? Did you have to do a renovation? And kind of like what the timeline looked like in the progression of what had to happen before you could release all 36 of those second mortgages, or 30 or however many, and then sleep at night again when the hard money loan was paid off?
Yeah, so I bought the building. I forgot the rate that I paid, but it was half. It was about 14 or 15 units were occupied, and the rest were empty, and it was really bad tenants. I think I had to evict 3 or 4 people right away. I got a good contractor in there, and that's one of the things about some of these bigger jobs. It's easier to find good work. It's easier to find like a good contractor, a good engineer, a good architect, because it's just a bigger building. So, like I had a great contractor on the job that was doing a lot of the rehabs, and he was, doing apartments, and like I think he did about, I don't know how long it took him. He might have done like 20 units in maybe 5 months or something, 6 months. And then we put granite countertops in, stainless steel appliances. I didn't accept Section 8. Section 8 was kind of my backup plan, but banks don't really like Section 8. So my goal was to fix it up, get it rented with all really good tenants, and then, call the bank and trying to refi it. And that was when I went to call the bank to refi it, that was kind of my first time where I was like, wow, the bank will actually lend me, millions of dollars. I think my loan was for maybe like around $2 million, maybe 1.5. But I was just surprised that they would lend me the money. I kind of thought, I would have a harder time getting the loan than I did. And that kind of opened the door for me to be like, I think I can, I was confident that I could go close a $1 or $2 million deal if I have all my paperwork in order and I just look really good on paper to a bank. So that's where I'm at today, I guess. I'm just starting to do some bigger deals.
That's pretty cool. So what was your exit strategy there? Was that just to refinance and hang on to that? Do you still own that property today? What did you end up?
I actually on that, I had a partner on that property. I bought him out for like $250, and then it ended up, I didn't really want to sell it. You know, interest rates were like so low at the time. I mean, they still are now, but so I kind of put it out there on a quiet listing with some North Jersey agent. And I ended up selling it. I think I sold it for like maybe like 2.4 or something. I mean, it was a great deal for me. It was, I guess looking back, it was, you know, the most profitable deal that I've sold. I mean, I wanted to keep it, but it was in Chester, so I figured it's not going to get, you know, better. That was my opinion about the whole thing.
Not really a gentrifying area where it was located.
Yeah, I mean, I thought if interest rates went up a little bit, the value of the building might have crept down. Like, I was really worried that if interest rates, you know, went to 6 or 7%, my building's gonna be worth a lot less money. So, I mean, I didn't have to sell it, but I just threw it out there some number. I think I sold it for $300,000 more than my appraisal came in at when I originally refied it.
If you don't want to answer the question, but that's fine. But what was your cost basis in there? What'd you buy it for? How much did you put in there in renovations?
I bought it for $900, and I put in around $400, maybe $450 in construction, and then I bought out my partner for $250, and I sold it for like, I don't remember, but about 2.3 or 2.4. And I had some costs, you know, some commissions along the way. I ended up making maybe like $500,000 or $600,000 on the deal.
So we briefly just mentioned gentrification. For anybody listening who doesn't know what that is, that's buying in advance of appreciation. Like when a neighborhood's starting to change over, maybe it had deteriorated to the point of, you know, board ups and shells and like low price, low value, low rent area, and then something happens in the neighborhood like job growth. Sometimes it's improvements in the public transportation system. It could be builders' tax incentives for building new construction. There's a variety of things that could drive gentrification, but gentrification would be an area of low value starting to turn over and see a significant investment, and then rents going up and values going up tremendously. So with that definition in the mind of the listeners, Nathan, have you bought properties intentionally in hopes of taking advantage of that? And if so, how did that work out, or are you still in the process of helping that work out?
No, that's a great question, Dan. Yeah, so I mean, I wish I've done that more, but I've done it, you know, enough where I'm still happy. I guess everybody that's done, you know, looking back, if they're like, I did 4 or 5 great deals, you know, and they kept them, they wish they did, you know, 20 of them. But I guess the first project I ever did that was really like that was in December of 2006. I think I was saying a little earlier, I bought a warehouse actually on the 1800 block of North Howard Street in Kensington. And I bought it because they broke ground on the piazza, maybe 8 blocks away at 2nd and Girard. And it was like they were building a city at 2nd and Girard. So I figured if I move 8 blocks north, you know, one day my neighborhood's going to get good. A lot of people told me I was crazy. This was the first deal I ever did that people told me I was crazy. And I brought my roommate, Chad, at the time there to come check it out. And we got out of the car, and there was like the top lights, the top helicopter was there. And he's like, get back in the car, you know, we're leaving. But I bought the place. I lived there. My buddy Chad ended up being my roommate for like 8 years. In that spot, and I lived there most of my 20s, and I lived on the top floor. It was like a 4,400 square foot apartment that I renovated, and then I rented out the first and second floor, and now that neighborhood is like the hottest neighborhood in Philly. It's like they have rental bikes on the corner, there's like a cafe there, there's a CrossFit gym across the street. It's like, I just smile when I go there because I'm like, I can't believe this neighborhood is like this. And I think I rented my apartment out, I think it's rented out for like $4,300 a month. I mean, it's in Kensington, you know?
That's wild. What were the numbers looking like on that, and what did you do? So you got a 4,400 square foot apartment. What were the other spaces rented out as?
Well, so that one at the time, I mean, I bought it in the end of 2006. So I bought it for like $550, and I put probably like $150 into it. The first and second floor were already in fine condition, but I ended up renovating the third floor. And then I got 2 roommates. I mean, it was a big place, and I was young. I was, you know, running around the city having fun. So I got 2 roommates that were paying me like probably around like $900 each a month. And then the first floor was rented for $2,000, and the second floor was rented for $2,000. So, you know, I basically lived for free for, I think, the 8 years that I was there. I mean, I didn't ever have to pay $1 towards my mortgage. So that was the main reason I did it, because I was like, I can live in this awesome apartment for free. You know, have a couple of roommates, and then I don't have to worry about, you know, the first the month comes, I have to scrounge up all the money. So the second floor, I rented out to maybe 8 artists. A lot of them worked at Urban Outfitters, and they just lived there and had crazy parties on the weekends, and they were paying $2,000 a month. And then the first floor is a cabinet shop. They're actually still there now, and their rent is still $2,000 a month in rent. Probably should have raised it, but I was nice because I was their neighbor. I didn't really want to raise their rent. But now I'm trying to move them into another building. I'm actually looking to buy something else because their rent should be $4,000 a month, but it's only $2,000. So I need it. But they're great tenants, and they've got a lot of value to me because I don't want to lose such a good tenant. So I'm looking to buy another building and move them somewhere else.
So, I mean, I remember back in 2006, 2007, you and I were competing over some, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 houses, and yeah, that's
I remember that.
So I imagine you had bought a handful. I know you've bought a handful of those really low end deals, make $500, $600, $700 a month, whatever. And then now we're talking about $4,300 a month out of that one unit. I'm going to ask you, Nathan, how has your taste for tenants/rents changed over the years? And what I mean is, the dollar amount for the tenant, have you put thought and started to steer your buying in a direction where maybe you're not obviously investing in the $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 houses any longer and kind of seeking out a different price point, more of a commercial thing? Just how has that developed as part of your investment strategy overall?
Yeah, well, I mean, I try to stay away from the really, really cheap houses now. I have a hard time with the $5,000 or $10,000 houses, but I still love, being all into a house for $50,000, and renting it for $1,200 a month, Section 8, or being all into a house for $60,000 and renting it to college kids for $1,500. But the really low end stuff, I'm having a hard time making money on some of that. I might have 10 units now that between turnover and vacancy and evictions, it's hard to make money on the ones that are you buy for $5,000 and you put 10 into it and it rents for $700 a month. I mean, it sounds good, but it's just tough to make money on a deal like that. I mean, in my personal opinion. I mean, some of the bigger deals, I'm starting to like a lot. I love having commercial tenants now. Something about it where, they're not living there and they're running their business out of the space. I like that a really lot. It's not as personal if I go to the building that they're in. I can just walk into their office and say hi to them. I might be friends with them anyway.
It sounds like you're kind of gravitating more a little bit toward the commercial tenants. Can you talk about the most recent commercial? I think you mentioned a 30,000 square foot commercial build out that you had recently done.
Yeah, that was the most recent one. It was 30,000 feet. That was another one that, most of my buddies told me I was nuts. I don't know if you know Jason Shorn. He's one of my good friends, and he's one of the smartest guys I know. But I brought him there when I bought it, and he's like, "You're out of your mind." So a lot of other people told me that too. And, sometimes I'm like, am I really out of my mind? But I got it renovated. I fixed it all up, 30,000 feet. I left the units pretty big. There's, 7 units in there. I've got all great tenants, with great credit. The rents are really strong. The neighborhood's on the up and up tremendously. I have two interior designers / stagers. They take up a lot of space with their furniture and their offices. And then I have 2 real estate offices in there. I've got an audio visual company. These guys make really cool videos they do music videos, and they do all kinds of stuff. But and then I've got a screen printer. The guy makes clothing. But yeah, the tenants are great. They're a lot different than renting to Section 8 or to students or I really enjoy going there and seeing them running their business and being they're making money in my building. It's kind of a cool thing.
They're about 4,000 or 5,000 square foot per. I mean, what made you kind of lay out that building or that structure that way? Did you have those tenants sort of lined up when you bought the deal, or was that built out completely on faith and then marketed to the public to find the tenants?
No, yeah, I built it out completely just, planning once it's done to rent it. I could have made the unit smaller, but it would have costed me a lot more money. So one day I can chop up the units if I ever wanted to. I could make some changes in the building, and I could add some more spaces. But I figured, I really wanted to rent to people that need a larger space there. I didn't really want to have 40 tenants in the building. So it was just a decision I made when I started the construction. I only needed 7, heaters, 7, everything. I didn't need 40 central air units on the roof or 40 doors to each unit. But one day I might change the plan there. I mean, the neighborhood's changing a lot. So I could see if a tenant moves out, I could divide the unit in half and, add another space to the building.
And what's the location for that one? Which neighborhood?
That building is on 6th and Diamond. It's like 4 blocks from Temple. It's actually a pretty transitional neighborhood. It's changed a lot since I bought the building. But it's close to, like, 3 directions. It's really developing a lot. Like, one north, it's not. But if you go 3 directions from the building, it's really starting to transition. So, again, I mean, that building is, I wish I did more buildings like that, a long time ago. But I'm, like, positive that, in 10 years, that neighborhood is going to be better. Even if the market turns, a lot of these neighborhoods in Philly, even if the market turns, the neighborhood still gets better. I mean, in 2006 when the market, or 2007 or whatever it was, when the market crashed, a lot of these neighborhoods that were transitional, they still kept getting better, and they never stopped getting better. I mean, that's what I noticed. I mean, I lived in one of the neighborhoods, and it was always it was a slow process at the time, but then when it was still getting better, and then, once the market picked up again, it happened a lot faster, but it never went down. Like, some of those neighborhoods in North Philly never even got hit when the market tanked.
Yeah, you got a point. I mean, my goal is to buy those type of deals like you're describing right there, where it's in a transitional neighborhood, maybe near the edge, that I have potential for upside, and I can still get strong rents from quality tenants that I don't have to, like, run down there and knock on the door and, like, be hiding out in my car on Friday afternoon when they come home with their check to, like, bounce out and grab the rent off them right away before they spend it over the weekend.
Yeah.
A little less maintenance with some of the tenants. So, like, that's kind of my goal. And, like, for me, from my perspective, it seems like the cities kind of took a hit. I did some reading on it, and the cities took a hit in, the 1950s, the 60s, and the 70s, as you saw, like, the advent of the highway system in the United States, where it became feasible to get into center city, pick a city anywhere in the country, much faster than it would have taken to go the old route where you had to go through the neighborhoods at stoplights, et cetera. So you had the highway system come on. You had suburbs being built. And so a lot of the population from cities wanted to go with this whole new thing. I want to go out to the suburbs. I want to get fresh air. It's clean. The school systems are different and things of that nature. But then, over the last 10, 15 years, you take a city like New York where they had gotten a real grip on the crime and started turning things around. And you have even like the leaders in Philadelphia and leaders in Chicago, they'll pick certain neighborhoods and they're going to put effort and resources. And there's a lot of thought from a lot of smart people in these cities who are helping to make these a place where people want to be. And so you have areas in Philadelphia, areas in Chicago, et cetera, where, there's a group of people who are like working to get investment to come in, who are working to get restaurants to come in. They're working to get new construction building and infill construction in a lot of these neighborhoods in Philly where you have the vacant properties and the vacant areas. So I think we just have, like, for me, looking back over the course of humanity, cities were always a place where ideas were exchanged, where people came to kind of like be close with one another. There's a certain convenience to that life. And I think that, like, collectively, at least in our country, that sort of like went away a little bit in the 50s and 60s with what happened in society and just like the transitions. But I think that collectively society is sort of remembering that. And I think we're on the cusp of a good future outlook, certainly for the next 10, 15, 20 years or more, as people remember the convenience and the pleasures of living the city life. That's just my kind of take on it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I also think that, that as population grows, population is always growing. I think there's going to be more people that want to live in the city. It's also great to be next to public transportation, just because there's, in 20 years, who knows how many more people are going to be swarming, Philadelphia. I mean, I'm sure the population is going to keep going up just because there's more. I mean, I haven't looked at statistics, but I know that, every year there's more people being born than people dying. So I just think it's going to become more developed, the city, as time goes on.
If you had to identify a neighborhood, Nathan, where you might want to buy a property like this, but you're not doing it in the context of Philadelphia, what would you describe as a couple things that, like, maybe you would look for around that neighborhood that might signal you were going to buy a property that would go up over the course of time?
In Philadelphia or not in Philadelphia?
Well, like, there's a lot of people who listen to the show all over the country, so if we were trying to describe...
That's your thing. I mean, I think one of the big things is, if you're buying a building and a transitional kind of neighborhood, I think it's great if you're going to be able to buy the building and renovate it, for way less than you can build something like that for. Because there's a lot of buildings in other cities where, it's an old building and, one day, I think there's going to be a time one day where there isn't a surplus of old abandoned buildings. But I love going in and buying an old building and renovating it where it's like, to build it would have cost 3 times more money. I think that's great to be able to do something like that.
How would you pick that? Were you looking for other development taking place, 3 blocks away, 8 blocks away, like you mentioned? What would be an abandoned building that would be worthless? If we went like way, way up into North Philly, I'm sure you'd say like, no, this is not something I would buy. So like, is there a certain criteria that you might like pay attention to as you were considering a building, like the Jasper deal that we're going to talk about here in a minute?
It's nice to buy something, with confidence that you can one day, rent it out to people. It's obviously a problem if you buy a building and then nobody wants to ever, occupy the space. But that old movie, I forgot what it was, like, if you build it, they will come. I think it was some baseball movie or something. Yeah. But, there's people now, like I talked to an old neighbor, yesterday, and he's looking to sell his building in Kensington. He's got an offer like $1.4 million. It's crazy. But he's looking to buy a building, far away to run his business. He has 15,000 square foot building, and he has a cabinet shop in there. So he needs to move from his location because it doesn't make sense to get $1.4 million. So he's looking to move 20 minutes away into probably one of those neighborhoods that you'd think nobody would want to be in. But it was interesting when he was telling me that, because there's probably a lot of people like that where they're getting pushed out of their warehouse space in their neighborhood because it's kind of changed and became really nice. But I think there's a market. There's always a market to rent spaces to people. As long as you're in a city, if you're in the middle of nowhere, in like the country, maybe not. But if you're in a city and there's a lot of people and you have a nice building, I can't imagine not being able to find renters at a certain price. Who knows what they would pay? But like my buddy Joe bought a building in Philly in like the 80s for like $100,000, and you rented spaces to artists for practically nothing and just waited until the neighborhood changed. And now that building that you bought for $100,000 is probably worth, $15 million or $20 million.
What's your strategy for getting tenants in today's market?
I don't do that much of our leasing. Steve does most of it for us, but I think a lot of our advertising is on Craigslist, and then I think we use all those other sites like I think Postlets it is. I think we put it on every site, like Postlets, like Zillow, Trulia, but I think Postlets might syndicate to all the other sites. So we do like online marketing. Sometimes we'll have a sign in for a house. We might have sometimes if we have a house, we put like a yard sign in front of one of the occupied houses because we don't really like having a sign in front of a vacant house. So we might put a sign in front of an occupied house, and then we'll just have calls coming in like for that whole neighborhood. But online, Craigslist, the newspaper. Sometimes we used to rent stuff a lot in the newspaper for Section 8, but I think Craigslist works really well for some of these commercial spaces. Personally, I don't do the MLS that much. I'm going to start using the MLS for the new building that I'm doing now. I think I'm going to make sure that it's on the MLS just because it's so many units.
Let's talk about that one. So to put it in context, in my opinion, it's a neighborhood that's 8 blocks or so north of a redeveloping area in Philadelphia, Fishtown, for listeners that know where that is. And I think it's an area that is in line of gentrification, and you have a couple of things I always look for. I look for, is there proximity to a highway to get down to the downtown area? Is there also public transportation to get to the downtown area quick, preferably high-speed rail system or, elevated train? And you have both of those that are kind of like boxing in the location where your 80,000 square foot building is located. And I've actually bought like 1 or 2 rentals. I thought I was going to have the opportunity to buy a lot more in that neighborhood, but I just couldn't come to terms with paying some of the prices that we would have had to pay to get those properties. And you're still also, to like fill in the context, there's still like a lot of like open air drug market activities, and there's like needles on the ground. There's like a lot of things that would make this neighborhood a challenge. So you got this property. What's your plan for building that out? What are the spaces going to look like, and how are you going to market for tenants and fill that space?
Yeah, so the building it's like 85,000 square feet. It's about, I think it's maybe 4 blocks north of Frankfurt Avenue in Lehigh. there's actually a lot of development going on right at that intersection at Frankfurt and Lehigh. It's going to get, in the next 3 years, it's going to be like, you're not going to be able to recognize it. There's a lot of land that's going to get developed there. So it's 55 units, 85,000 square feet. The smaller units are going to be about 400 square feet, and the rent is going to start out at $350 a month. The larger spaces go all the way up to about 8,000 square feet. I mean, there's a lot of spaces that are, nice offices for 1,000 square feet. I'm going to be renting them for about $700 a month. They're like really nice spaces. I mean, it's going to be like an amazing office building. I mean, the location I wouldn't call amazing, but the building has so much character with, huge windows, all exposed wood ceilings. I mean, it's just an awesome place. Like when I go there, I'm like happy. When I go to a house that I'm renovating, it's like it's kind of boring. But when I go to one of these old warehouses, it's like it's awesome.
What type of construction budget did you have on this, and are you still on budget, or are you already over?
We're a little over budget, but not by much. I mean, it's looking like the whole project, I think, is going to go to about $300,000 more than we had planned. At the same time, we made some changes, to increase the value of the building. We added 6 units. We ended up knocking down a building, a 1-story building in the parking lot to create more parking. I definitely wouldn't have wanted to do the project if it wasn't for the parking lot. I think that's a huge advantage. There's a lot of buildings in the area that don't have parking, that might be a mile away. So I guess our total construction budget is, I think it's about $3 million, and we bought the building for $900,000. It's a pretty big project. I mean, it's not, definitely the biggest project I've ever done.
What's the funding structure look like on this one, Nathan?
I ended up borrowing 50% of the deal from a local bank, and then I borrowed 40% of the deal in second position from a local nonprofit bank. And then me and my partner both ended up putting 5% each into the deal. He's actually going to have his office there. He's going to have a 15,000 square foot office on the top floor. He's getting pushed out of his neighborhood he's in. He wants to rent his office for more money.
What do you guys project that the value would be on this property if you can get it at, 90% occupancy? I'm not even sure what the standard would be.
I mean, it's probably worth around $5 million when we're done with it. I mean, the main thing is that the rents are going to start going up, I think. That's really what we're banking on. It's not like if the neighborhood stayed the same and the rent stayed the same, it's not, anything to write home about. But I'm really hoping that in the next 5 years, the rents are going to go up. We might start out at 75, 80 cents a square foot. But I think in 5 years, we might be at $1.25 or $1.30 a square foot. And then we'll be making, a really lot of money on it. Obviously, the value of the building, is going to be worth a lot more if we're getting $1.30 a square foot instead of 75 cents.
You had talked about, buying more of those opportunities like the Diamond Street property and, like the warehouse you bought in 2006 on North Howard Street where you lived. And it sounds like you really got a little bit of a scale on this one. We're buying 85,000 square feet in what is, a neighborhood that you and I both kind of agree is looking like it's in the, in the line of improvement, as it were. And you've had the opportunity to kind of like scale up. Was that intentional or just? I
don't think it was that intentional. It kind of just happened. I mean, I think like I was planning on just buying more houses, but I'm getting a little bit tired of like buying rentals. It's kind of, it's not that fun for me. I mean, I still do it, and ultimately, it's my main source of income. I'd say, my rental properties, but I don't like wake up and like love going to buy, a house to fix up and rent it out Section 8. It's just like, but these warehouses, like they excite me every day. Like I love going to the job site. I love, figuring out what's next and, seeing the progress every day. And it's also a lot easier dealing with some contractors because I've got great contractors on the job and these guys are, really accountable. It's not like, I've got like an electrician that's doing a $2,500 rewire and I need to make sure he's showing up every day. I mean, these guys are like, legit, licensed, insured contractors that, don't ask me for money every week. Sometimes I have to ask them, like, you want some money? I mean, like, I owe you a lot of money. So it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, these guys have like, 20 or 30 or 40 employees and they like know what they're doing. They know like everything and they know a lot more than me about construction. And they, like, the electrician on the job, the HVAC guy, we got the window manufacturer putting in the windows, so it's like, how good is that you can get the manufacturer of the window company to come down and put the windows in. Normally, I can't do that on a regular job.
And I have like another 100 questions, but we're kind of getting to that time in the interview. So I'm going to switch gears here and go with our wrap up questions. So the first is, do you have, or is there a single idea, system, or strategy that you have implemented over the last 12 to 24 months and experienced maybe exponential growth as a result?
I don't really have any specific strategies. I mean, I try and stay organized. I'm not the most organized person in the world, but, my team tries to help me stay on track. I mean, I think we've been using QuickBooks for the last, 4 years. I used to write everything down when I was younger. Probably the last 5 years, we've been using QuickBooks. I've been using Google Drive a lot. I know you're like all into this tech stuff, but for us, like, everything's on Google Drive. All of our mail is scanned there. So I check my mail every, a couple of days a week on Google Drive. I don't even have to look at it. It's just scanned in, and then I check it online. Like that kind of stuff, like these systematic things that we put in place, I think has really been helping my business a little bit.
Who would you identify as being a successful real estate investor or developer? And also, could you define why you consider them successful?
I'd say two of the people that I really look up to a lot, local real estate guys. The first one is probably Jim Bennett. He's kind of a genius. I mean, he went to UPenn. I'm sure you know who he is. But he went to UPenn, and he's got maybe like 300 rentals in Center City, and he lends out a lot of money. I mean, whenever he's talking, I'm always listening because he's kind of a genius. Like, I hate it when he's talking and somebody cuts him off because I'm like, stop it. I'm like, this guy's a genius. Let him talk. So, hey, him and then Jason Shoren, too. I mean, Jason, is really crushing it. He's one of my best friends. He's partners with me on a lot of deals, and he, is really building up his business in terms of his rentals and his flips. So I've got a lot of respect for those two guys, and if I ever need advice, I try and get them on the phone any chance I can.
Do you happen to have 2 or 3 book recommendations that you make to anybody?
Oh, man. Unfortunately, it sounds crazy, but I don't think I've ever read a book before, Dan. I read half of The Old Man and the Sea in 6th grade, but so I can't really make any book recommendations. Everyone always talks about that Rich Dad Poor Dad book. I think I read maybe 30 pages of it. But yeah, I mean, I know our buddy Joe Nielsen, his basic buying rental strategies are pretty good. I've used a lot of his strategies before. I mean, it's basic stuff, but it makes a lot of sense. I don't know the name of his book, but I think if you're looking to buy rentals, I kind of like Joe Nielsen's ideas for just buying and refining and getting all your money back and, doing it over again.
Yeah, and Joe was on our show here, so I'll make sure I link to his episode. His episode, I believe, has links to his website and his book, so if anyone's interested, they could take a look at that. There's definitely some solid information there.
Mm.
That's what I was saying. You're such an enigma, It's like no book recommendations. Usually you hear, I read 40, 50,000 books, and you get hundreds of different. And it's just so cool to have a different perspective on the show. It's it's very unique. Nathan, now you started when you were pretty young in the business, but if you could go back and share what would be the crown jewel of wisdom with your 18-year-old self, what would that be?
I think I might have said it earlier, but I definitely, should have learned differently in the beginning. I used to stop Tom Brawley in his truck in Sun Hill and ask him real estate questions, and I definitely should have been going to real estate meetings, going to events, getting out there. I went to your meeting last night. I haven't been there it's been a while, but, just getting out there, talking to guys. I mean, a lot of my close friends in real estate I've met, through these networking events. So I definitely should have, when I was 18 or 19, I should have been I should have found out about all the local real estate groups, and I should have been going, once or twice a week. I think that would have, blossomed to me a lot faster instead of trying to just learn on my own or, ask people questions in the street. So I wish I did that differently when I was younger.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And for anyone listening, in some of the cities that we operate, we host the Ring, the Real Estate Investor Networking Group meetings. They're usually $10 to door. Some of the meetings are actually free. We usually have food and we usually have an expert speaker come each month. But, the real value is you hear some stuff and you learn some stuff from the expert speaker. But The real value comes in, the random business associations, the relationships that are formed through those networking events. I mean, that's where I met you originally, Nathan. You want to know who's doing business. It's like you could like stop when this guy's like rolling down the street, Tom Borelli, and chase him down and try like that way. But, these networking events, and not just mine, there's a variety of real estate associations, all across the United States where, all the people who are doing shit are like coming to those. They don't come every month because they're busy, but you gotta like take advantage of some of the randomness. I still do deals to this day with a partner of mine that I met at the very first ring meeting that I went to years before I ended up kind of taking over organizing the event. So yeah, you know who it is. I'm not going to mention, he prefers his privacy, but that's cool, man. So if anyone's interested in checking out our events, you can stop by our website. I'll make sure I link to that as well, and you can check us out. Hey, Nathan, did you have any contact information or websites or anything like that you'd like to share with anybody?
I mean, I guess if somebody wants to reach out to me, they can shoot me an email at nathan@ahomerentals.com. So that's Nathan and then at the letter A, homerentals.com. I think that's the best way to get me.
Listen, Nathan, I appreciate you coming on the show and taking some time out of your busy schedule there from renovating that huge building and everything else you got going on to share, your experience and wisdom with our listeners. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Nice. Thanks a lot for having me, Dan. I appreciate it.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Diamond Show. I did mention a few times throughout this episode our real estate investor networking groups. I cannot tell you how important and instrumental real estate networking has been in my own real estate investing career. I am still doing business with, several people that I met at my very first ring meeting long before I was an organizer of those events. And I couldn't imagine the direction of my career if I had not made a point to go to those. And even still today, I try to make, in addition to the ring meetings that I'm going to, I still try to make 1 or 2 meetings every month that are hosted by other people in the market that I'm living in here currently in Chicago. And everybody on my team throughout the country also makes a point of going to 1, 2, or 3 networking events just to put yourself out there and hopefully take advantage of some of those random connections, the same way that I met Nathan, whose episode we just listened to. So if you are interested in checking out our upcoming local networking events, the ring meetings, you can go to www.reidiamonds.com, and I have a link there where you can see the schedule and locations. And if you are interested in receiving a notification when I release the next episode, you may sign up at www.reidiamonds.com or subscribe through one of the podcasting apps, including iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. And if you are interested in buying or selling a deal from me, or to me, rather, visit www.reidiamonds.com and click the link at the top of the page. I'm currently looking for deals in Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Chicago, and the Tampa Bay region in Florida. And finally, if you've enjoyed this episode and know somebody else who might also enjoy this episode, I'm going to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, to forward this episode to them. I appreciate the referrals, and I appreciate you, my loyal REI Diamond Show listener. Dan Breslin here. I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the REI Diamonds Show with Dan Breslin. To receive email notifications of new weekly episodes, sign up at www.reidiamonds.com.